if I hung around with Buddha every single day, but I didn't actually implement what he told me or what he advised, nothing had changed.
Hey guys, welcome to our SoulFam Podcast, where I interview space holders from all over the world. I am your host. My name is Karolina, and I am the connection catalyst. I help spiritual entrepreneurs experience deeper connection with themselves, with others, and with the universe. Today on the show, we have Lisa Towers, the anxiety advocate. Welcome to the show, Lisa. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really well. The sun's shining. It's a lovely day.
I know, when the sun is
but
out, we just feel so happy, right?
Absolutely. It really lifts your spirits and it just makes everything feel so much better. It's lovely.
I know, and especially when you live in UK, you gotta celebrate these sunny days, right?
I'm saying, yeah. Mind you, we're getting more and more, but yeah, coming out of winter is always a bit, please give me the sunshine. And obviously it's arrived and it's wonderful.
Yeah,
So-
and you know, it's actually I will tell you a funny thing. In the past, before when I was like finishing high school, I was like, oh, maybe I'm gonna go and study in the UK. And then I went in like August. I went to UK for 2 weeks, and it was raining all the time. And I'm like, if it's the summer and it's raining all the time for 2 weeks, I'm not gonna study here.
I know.
You know?
But then it's, you know, that's why we've got the beautiful greenery and the Peak District and the Derbyshire, you know, it's so there's a blessing for the rain, but sometimes we kind of think enough is enough. Give me the sun.
Exactly. It's just funny because as I mentioned, my family lives in rugby in the UK. I'm like, maybe I'm gonna join them, and then I was like, nope, I need the sun. I'm not gonna go.
No.
But then I didn't choose. I didn't choose any better because then I lived in Denmark, which is also quite windy and cold and whatever.
Really?
But yeah, sometimes not in the summer though. In the summer it's all good. But yeah, I studied my master's in Copenhagen, and it was a beautiful, beautiful journey. Although half of my master's I spent in Singapore and in Australia as well. So you know, I'm a nomad.
You're travelled.
Yeah, I love traveling.
Well, I lived in Spain for 6 years, and I'll be honest, this was in the 80s and 80s, 90s, and it was boiling, you know, hot all the time, and I got sick of it. I got sick of the sun.
Yeah, I never get sick of the sun.
I missed the seasons. I missed, but yeah, I do like the sun. But when it's too hot, I find it a bit anxiety provoking.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask, like, do you feel like the weather can actually induce or decrease our anxiety?
I think it can actually. I think, like, I know for me, I like fresh air. So getting out every day, I've got 3 dogs, 3 whippets, and I'm out. And I kind of, before that, I'd only walk in the sunshine, and now I actually walk all weather. And it's so uplifting. But I'll be honest with you, the days where it's raining and it's grey, I kind of walk. But the days like today, I'm out there for quite a long time. I can feel my whole body is uplifted. So definitely, and I do know from speaking to people that, you know, over the winter periods, the mood can drop. And it is a lot to do with the vitamin D you get from the sunshine, and you know, all those, I don't know, there's something about the sunshine that can lift you. Saying that, when I was in Cyprus, I remember once it was the heat was unreal. It was in July, and I was in a open top car with no roof, and we were driving. It was probably about a 2-hour drive, and all of a sudden this rush of unwellness and anxiety feeling and just awfulness came over me, and it was the heat, you know. So I think again, you've got to be sensible, sit in the shade, drink water, because it can bring on feelings that sort of feel a little bit like anxiety or panic, So, yeah, I think the weather can affect people.
Yeah, I think so too. And there are also people who feel way better when it's sunny and bright. And I know people who just love the cold and they are feeling way better and less anxious when it's just cold, and they can just close themselves at home with a fireplace and just be cuddly and comfortable in there.
I think
so. It depends on the person.
We're all so different. We're all so different. It's like some people like Brussels sprouts, some people don't. It's just the way we are, And but yeah, for me, I definitely like to have a bit of sun on my face.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I love when it's 30 degrees. Like Costa Rica is my favorite place to be, and it's like 30 degrees pretty much constantly, and I feel great when it's like that. So it depends on the person, as we said. And so I'm really curious, how did you become the anxiety advocate? I know that it's based on your personal story as well, big time, and I would love you to share at least briefly, because I know that you've already shared your story, but for our listeners, I would love you to share as well where it all got inspired from.
It's basically, I started suffering from anxiety in the late 80s, early 90s, and nobody I knew suffered. There was no internet, so you couldn't research. You could go to the library. And so for years I had this like dirty little secret, if you like, and it was really, really tough. And then when the internet was born, I had a career in the civil service. I worked as a senior manager, and we used to have, like in most organisations, they used to have a health and well-being day. And this, every year, it would be about fitness and, nothing about mental health, nothing. And I'd already had years under my belt of hiding my struggles, saying I had migraines, saying I had women's trouble, when I was ill. And that weight really weighed on the fact that I was already, feeling struggle through anxiety. But I also had this weight of feeling ashamed. No one else seemed to have it. It was just me. And it was awful. So I remember at one event, I was sat next to a senior manager, and I just said, I wish these events touched on mental health. And I thought, shit, this could be career ending for me, because, I'm a senior manager and I'm meant to be all together. This is the myth that everybody is okay, where they're not, and it's okay not to be okay. But so she said to me, why? And I said, because I've suffered with anxiety for about 15 years and panic attacks. And she just looked at me and I thought, oh no. And she said, I'm so glad you said that. I've suffered from depression. And then from that relationship, we got together and decided to raise awareness. And starting within the UK government. And we started saying, hi, I'm Lisa. I've got, I'm a senior manager, but I suffer with panic attacks and anxiety. And then she did the same. And from there, we set up a network that went national. I couldn't believe it. We were going around the UK giving talks. And at the time, I was still suffering with anxiety. But what we thought was just be a regional, where we were, it became huge. And the amount of people coming forward saying, oh my God, I suffer as well, or I know someone who does, or my husband does, or my boyfriend does, or, and it was so humbling, one, for me, that it wasn't just me on my own, but two, we were making a difference here. People were being heard and validation, and we changed things, and we just went with it. And it was just wonderful.
Wow, that's such an inspiring story. Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I
Thank
feel
you.
like a big problem in any emotion that people feel, really, whether it's anxiety or fear or, guilt, shame, is that they feel like they are the only ones feeling it and no one else is suffering from anything. When the reality is like everyone had childhood trauma in even just going to school or even being born or anything, right? Could be a trauma for us that could induce anxiety or guilt or shame or whatever else. And so everyone really is suffering in, higher or smaller sense, in a way. And if they don't, then they probably haven't looked at their subconscious mind, because in the subconscious all these things are stored, right? And so it's so healing sometimes for people to be able to just say it and just express it, that okay, I suffer from this, I suffer from that. And this itself can be already healing very much, because then you can admit it in front of yourself. And what was your subconscious mind, what you were hiding, not only from others but also from yourself, you are bringing to the conscious mind, to the light. And you're like, okay, you're claiming this identity. Okay, I suffered from anxiety. And then from there, when you already admit to the reality, to the truth of how it is, you can take steps forward to change it, right? Because if you're just suppressing and denying and zoning and rejecting all these parts of you that feel bad, then you're like not speaking the truth. You're not admitting to what authentically you feel, and then you cannot really change it, because it's like if you don't admit to your leg that is broken, you're not going to go to the hospital, whereas like, okay, I have a broken leg, now I can do something about it, right? So I really truly believe that just speaking out and just like talking to people about this already can heal so much in people's lives, because then they get rid of all this shame, because there is a layer of shame, right? And guilt probably as well, to all these emotions, right? Because we were conditioned so much to feel like it's not okay to feel anxiety, it's not okay to feel anger, it's not okay to feel anything, really, right? So our society is just set up in this way that we feel ashamed of feeling things, right? You cannot just do full-on emotional release in the supermarket, which I think is a pity, because I feel like if it was allowed, if it was accepted, if it was okay for people to feel anything they feel, we wouldn't have so many problems, really, and so many depressed people who are just like hiding with their feelings at home, because they feel like it's not okay to feel the feelings, right? So thank you so much for doing what you're doing, because I truly believe that
No,
you're changing
thank
lives
you.
by speaking out and really sharing your work with others. And it's just amazing. And it's when we least expect it that our work spreads everywhere, right? Or that our work really helps
It's
others.
And it really highlights actually the need for this kind of education, psychoeducation in children in schools. Because you're right, we're not taught. In fact, we're taught the opposite, that it's not okay to cry. It's not okay to say that you're feeling uncomfortable. You've always got to be on your best behavior. And that kind of gets ingrained. And then it doesn't align with what we're naturally meant to do when we're meant to process these emotions. When, having anxiety is not you, it's something you experience. It's like when you have a fit of laughter, you're experiencing laughter, you're not laughter. So when you have anxiety and panic, it's not you, it is something that you experience, because inside there may be some trauma, like you said. And trauma, again, is another topic that I was taught to believe that trauma was something like massive. If you had a massive incident happen in your life, it doesn't have to be like that. We're all different. Again, going back to that anything can traumatize you, even mildly. But if you don't process that because you don't know how to, it stays in your body. It stores in your body, and then one day, a couple of years later or 5 years later, something will happen and it'll knock that stored trauma, and then it'll explode again. And so for me, it's about getting it into education for kids, and learning again that it's okay to not feel okay, and it will pass. So I didn't get that. I was actually, the first time I was diagnosed, my psychologist at the time, in the 90s, said, "You have got an anxiety disorder. You'll have it for the rest of your life. Here's some tablets. Bye."
Oh my God.
And Back then, that's probably what he thought, you know.
I mean, even
So
now
I
people
left,
think so.
I left that clinic thinking I was a flawed person. I was now damaged for the rest of my life, where in fact, that wasn't the truth. Yes, I was experiencing anxiety and very acute, but I could recover from that, and I was never given that option. So I think I'm so glad that there are, you know, health professionals now who know the facts and are supporting people better.
Yes.
So I found out for myself. Dr. Claire Weeks, I found on the internet, and once I found the books that she wrote, my life changed.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so amazing. And what is she talking about mainly? Is it just like different emotions or anxiety specifically?
Anxiety, again, she's talking about you can recover, that it's something that happens to you. You experience it. It's not you. You know, it's not like you've changed and now you're an anxious person for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And again, processing and how you react. So what happens to people when they first have anxiety is we don't know about it, do we? Until it starts affecting you. And then it is so intense and scary that because you don't know anything, your mind likes to know everything. It starts filling in the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts, and the gaps it fills in are all scary. So it's kind of like, oh my God, there's something wrong with you. Oh my God, you're going to have a heart attack, or you're going to go crazy, and because you don't know any different, you believe these thoughts. And so you get into a loop of anxiety where you don't want to feel it anymore. And that is fear-based. I don't want to feel like this, so you're suppressing and avoiding, and that's fueling it. So the brain then thinks, oh my God, she is in danger. We better release the chemicals that get her out of the way. But there's nothing to get out of the way of. There isn't a bear. There's not a dog running after you trying to bite you. You know, it's just your thoughts about this emotional experience. And so she peels away all that and explains it amazingly. She wrote her books in the 1960s. Can you believe that? And they've only, you know, she's helped millions of people now, but the psychologist or psychiatrist back then said it was nonsense, but it isn't. And it's actually what everything to do with recovery is based on today, is her teachings. So she's a real gift to this earth, you know, to the human race, basically.
Just like you are, because you're changing lives as well with your work and your
thank you.
your book and everything, which we're going to talk about soon. But yeah, I just want to comment on what you just said. It's like, yeah, the anxiety is emotion, and emotion is energy in motion. So if you can move the energy, then it's no longer there. Yeah. And what you resist persists, right? So if you resist the anxiety and you're scared of the anxiety because no one has ever told you, okay, it's just energy, just be with it and let it out, and then it's not going to be there anymore. So you're scared of it. So you're keeping these thoughts of fear in your mind. And I feel like I remember that it's scientifically proven that the thought kept in your mind for more than 7 seconds triggers another thought with a similar vibration. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle, like a loop, as you said, this downward spiral that you can go into if you just don't have this basic knowledge of like, okay, this is just energy. I'm just going to allow it, sit with it, and let it out, right? Express it somehow. Maybe my body needs to shake. Maybe I need to cry. That's okay. However, this energy wants to move through my body and be out, this is how I'm just gonna let it happen, and then there is no problem anymore. And you know, I also do trauma work for work and inner child healing and things like that. So for me,
lovely. I love that.
Yeah, these are very familiar topics, because really it's like if you get familiar with feeling your feelings, then no emotion is scary for you. And I want to share this with you and with our audience as well about anxiety itself, because to me, it took me around maybe 1.5 or 2 years of doing trauma work pretty much on a weekly, sometimes daily basis, depending on how frequently triggered I was, until I got to the point where I was able with my whole body to allow the panic attack feeling
Yeah.
inside of me, because I was working through the abandonment wound in childhood, and only after 1.5 or 2 years, I don't know exactly, of working on myself, I was able to go as deeply as I possibly could, where my whole body was shaking and I couldn't breathe. But through this trauma work that I've done before, I knew that I'm safe. I knew that it's just energy. I knew that it's just a feeling, and I wasn't panicking about panicking. I was just allowing the panic to be there, and this is how I released it. But I could only do it after some time, because at first I needed to be familiar with a little bit of fear, then with a little more fear, then with a little more anxiety, and then I was fully able to be like, okay, I'm accepting of this panic attack or panicky feeling now, because I know that it's just the energy. But it took me a while for my body to be ready to process it, right? So I really think that it's important to mention that sometimes you cannot heal everything at once. You need to gradually go step by step, and then you can release it all.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because I'm another fan of Michael Singer, who wrote The Untethered Soul. And I did a series of video. I watched his series of videos about this, and because when I was recovering, I was like, so why do I have periods of going through stuff, and then I feel amazing, and then it comes back again? And one of the things he said is, usually when you're at the stage of real panic and awfulness, you've been suppressing for so long that this has to be released. But the body knows that if you released it all at once, you probably wouldn't cope with it. So the body releases pockets of it. And that's why you get setbacks. And I really understand that, because like you said, you learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it is uncomfortable. There's no two ways of getting over it. I mean, even now, if I have an experience of anxiety, it's uncomfortable. But what is different is I've not attached any fear to it. It's just uncomfortable. It's just like when you have a really bad headache, it's there's no fear attached to it. And so Michael Singer says that you can't just have all those years of suppressing released all at once, because you wouldn't cope with it. The body wouldn't cope with it. So the body, which is really smart, releases it in pockets. And it really made sense, that, to me, because I had 15 years of suppressing under my belt when I first started learning about releasing. And the inner child stuff as well, I can really relate to that, because even as an adult, I felt like a child. If someone criticized me, I'd feel like a child. And it was because as a child, I had a narcissistic brother that basically made me feel like I was worthless all the time, and a strict father. So I never learned to be good enough for myself, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so also because we always internalize people that are around us, right? We kind of have like an internal father and internal brother. So then in order for us to kind of not get hurt by them, we hurt ourselves first, so that then we can protect ourselves from them hurting us. So then we have this internal strict parent or brother inside, and then we hurt ourselves through that. So I can only imagine how challenging it might have been for you as a child,
I mean, my childhood was, I thought, nothing bad happened to me, and my mum, but now I can see, now I'm older and I've done a lot of work on myself, that my mum was suppressed. And the males in my family were the kings, if you like, and the women, but that came from my mum's own upbringing, and so it's amazing how much you pick up from your environment. And But I'm just glad I always had this little flame inside me that was, this isn't, this isn't. Even when I had the diagnosis that I was damaged for the rest of my life, I thought, this can't, it just doesn't make sense. And that's, I think, what made me, when the internet was born, go out and find as much information as I could. And I won't stop, because, you know, I always believe that if what I share helps one person, it's worth it. Because I'd never want anyone to feel as isolated as I did back in the 90s.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear your story, and especially it's so inspiring that you were like not agreeing with the diagnosis and not being like, okay, now I'm just gonna be in this identity, right? Because these are such false identities that we just pick up as labels on ourselves, and then it's kind of like a victim mentality mode in a way, like, okay, now I have this disease or this condition, and now I just need to take pills till the rest of my life and I'm never gonna get out of it. Versus the creator identity is like, okay, I was diagnosed with this, but is it actually really true? Can I create something else? And just stepping into this empowered version of yourself. So that's so good. I'm really proud of you that you are where you're at.
Thank
Because, you know, you could as well go the opposite side and just be, you know, in the victim mode.
It's so easy to. It's so easy to do that. And, you know, I did live in that. But I remember going to an event once, and I was raising awareness of anxiety, and everyone who was coming up, it was a mental health day, and everyone who was coming up was introducing themselves as their diagnosis. And I thought, wow, I used to do that. It was like we totally lost who we really are to a diagnosis. And that was, you know, I looked out and I saw all these people, and I thought, it's so wrong. We're labeling ourselves with what we've been diagnosed without actually having the true knowledge of actually what's happening. And so I think that's another thing. It's really important to be careful that you don't label yourself, because labels can be really powerful and they can lower you. And so just get curious about it. You know, the curiosity I came from, how did I be this girl from Wales who moved to London on her own and then moved to Spain on her own, and I was confident, and how did I go from that to this in like that? I couldn't. But obviously I learned that I'd been through something traumatic and stress, and you know, it builds and builds and builds, and then you pop. And then when it popped, I had no knowledge of what was happening to me. So again, the brain filled in the gaps, and I fell into the fear rabbit hole, which a lot of people do.
And so when this bubble pops, as you say, what is your advice to people who maybe struggle with anxiety or panic attacks? What would be the first go-to?
Obviously, I always advise to go to your GP, because your doctor, because everyone is different. And I don't know, you know, some people it may be trauma, some people it may be a build-up of stress. You know, like that story they say about a frog, if you put him in lukewarm water, he'll swim around nicely. But if you turn the heat up slowly, eventually he'll jump out as the water heats up. And I think life can turn up the heat. You can be managing and managing and managing, and then it just goes 1 degree hotter and you explode. So always go to your doctor and have a chat. But, you know, I'd research as much as possible about anxieties. Well, that's what I did. That's where I got my knowledge from. And accept that it is going to be uncomfortable, because actually anxiety is designed to get you out of harm's way. So if it was quiet and like tapped you on the shoulder and said, excuse me, you'd already be in the middle of the road and the lorry had come. It's got to be like whoosh, so that you pay attention. But unfortunately, it also pops when the attention you need to pay is, hang on a minute, maybe I need to change my lifestyle a little bit, start self-care more, and just look at the reasons why, and be honest with yourself. You know, I had gone through it was a traumatic experience. I'd lost my son to his father had taken him back to Spain. So that's awful. Like, you know, my 3-year-old child. And rather than, because I didn't know how you process things, I was trying to get him back. It took me 6 years. But in that time, I was drinking. I was trying to lead life as normal, you know, as normal as possible. And then that's why the anxiety so I'd been through a traumatic relationship. I'd lost my son. He'd been taken back to Spain. But I did nothing to process all of that, if that makes sense, because I didn't know you had to back then. So just build on your awareness, you know, of how to look after yourself. And I don't mean go and have your nails done, and I mean really look after yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ask yourself about your needs and about your desires in the moment, because I feel like all the emotions actually that are negative come from some unmet needs. So if we can know our needs, for example, maybe you need to take a vacation from the boss that is inducing anxiety, or for example, maybe you need to do a relaxation meditation every morning before you do anything else, or you maybe need to do some breathwork exercises for yourself to make yourself feel more peaceful and to just get this cortisol levels down or whatever, right? Because like there is a lot of things we can do, or maybe you need to exercise more, because that's gonna, or changing your diet, right? Diet is such a big theme when it comes to anxiety. There are some foods that can make you feel more anxious than others, right? So if you can look into all of these factors, then you can be like, okay, this is the care that I'm looking for, right? This is all the aspects of my life I need to check and see what plays like into the identity and label of the anxious person versus what doesn't, and get inspired by people who maybe don't feel anxiety. Like, what do they do? People who are happy, like how do they feel? What do they, you know, what rituals do they have, or what they think as well? Because sometimes I feel like we can feel like, okay, these are my thoughts and they are mine and it's just how it is. But no, the thoughts, first of all, are not
No,
ours.
I
90% of
think
our thoughts are not
surround
ours.
yourself. Surround yourself, be mindful of who you surround yourself with as well. And it's okay to say, this isn't for me, even if it is for everyone else. If it doesn't resonate with you, or it's not serving you, then leave it, ditch it. That's what I did. And it's, again, like you said about the gut and the mind, and there's stuff coming out now. I was talking to a clinical psychologist who actually lectures in one of the London universities, and she was saying that more and more evidence, like scientific evidence, is emerging of how much the brain and the gut are linked, because most of our serotonin is in our gut. And so of course it affects your mental health. So if you're sort of not eating well and you're not staying hydrated and you're drinking a lot, and then yeah, it can affect your mental health.
So
It's all exciting.
I would love to talk about your book, Simply Anxious. First of all, I would love to know about where the title came from. Why Simply Anxious?
My name on Instagram is Simply Anxious. And when I first set my page up, I was thinking, you know, what can I call it? And I just thought, I don't know, it's Simply Anxious, you know, because I was simply anxious. I wasn't damaged. And I'm not trying to say that it's not hard to suffer with anxiety, because it is really, really hard. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But I wasn't damaged, and I didn't have brain damage, and I wasn't unfixable. I was simply anxious. And if they'd taught me that in school, maybe I wouldn't have suffered for as long as I did, because I really suffered bad. There were a couple of times where I thought, I can't do this anymore. And if I'd have had the knowledge, because back then I thought I was damaged, if I hadn't have thought that, things would have probably been a lot easier, and my recovery would have still been challenging, because, you're trying to learn not to fear something that every part of your body is screaming at you to move, to get to safety. So there's all that rewiring you need to do. But you can do that once you know the facts. You know that this alarm feels horrendous, but it's firing because I'm thinking distorted thoughts about it. I'm not thinking how I should. It's just the disorder, the anxiety disorder. And that's how you break out of it, by staying with it, sitting with it, learning from it. So yeah, I forgot the question. I went all the way.
Oh yeah, you already answered the question, because I was asking about the name
good.
Simply Anxious. But then that brings me to another question. So if someone was feeling anxiety next to you in this moment, or having like a panic attack, how would you guide them? What would you advise them to do?
I love grounding techniques. So I'm a big fan of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is look at 5 things, hear 4 things, smell 3 things, whatever order you want. But I would reassure them that this is a brilliant opportunity for you to release some of the hold that anxiety has on you. Just breathe, sit with it. You're completely safe. I'm with you. Not that makes any difference. And watch how, if you stay with anxiety and you let go of all the resistance, you will witness it rise, because once it's released, you can't unrelease it. It's got to run its course, So you can watch it peak, which it always does, and then it burns out. And that is when you learn to see that pattern, all those thoughts of this is going to last forever, I'm never going to get over this, start to weaken, because it's not true. It's not true. It's a release. So I would, depending on how traumatized, I wouldn't bombard them with all that information. I would just reassure them that they're completely safe and this is going to pass. And this is a really good opportunity to, or if it's really panic, you can do things like ice on the wrist, ice or cold water, sipping cold water, anything that shocks the mind into something, focusing on something else.
Like a pattern interrupt.
Yeah. I mean, I used to sing, and I can't sing, but when I was learning to sit with the feeling, I'd start singing, because it shifts your attention. And the goal is not to react with fear, because that will produce more adrenaline. And then you're in the loop.
Yes, and I completely agree with that. That I would also do the same as you. I would just guide people to go in it and just create a safe container for someone to actually go there, because the more we can go there and accept the feeling and allow it, the more we heal. And it comes in layers, as we said before, but if we can just like breathe through it and just ground ourselves and be okay with feeling it, that's what's going to create the most healing. So I'm with you on that. And so what can we expect from Simply Anxious book? Can you tell us briefly about it?
Yeah, in the book, I've done it in small, bite-sized, easy readable sections, because there was no internet, I keep saying that, but when I did start trying to educate myself on anxiety, I'd go to the library and they were like that, these books, and they were like, oh my God, just too much.
Even
And
seeing it already is
so,
like, nope, I'm not gonna read it.
yeah, and so I wanted to share how I'd recovered, explain it as easy as I could. I think I've got a bit of hay fever this morning. The minute the sun comes out,
That's completely
it
fine.
starts. Um, just as easy as I could, as simple, sharing tips, some of the tools I used. There's a section on Dr. Claire Weeks. I actually got in touch with her family, who was still a family that are still alive, and sent them the chapter for their approval, and they were really pleased, because she saved my life, basically, her work. And just sharing the things that I did to get me to a place where I was recovered. And the book is to inspire, motivate, and just empower people. So it's not your medical base. I'm not a medical professional. I'm just someone who knows a lot about anxiety because I lived with it for so long. So
Mhm.
yeah, hopefully it will. I mean, the reviews I'm getting is really good. And I think that when you share something that you've actually got lived experience with from, is it just is stronger, isn't it, than if you open a book and it's just all medical based facts.
Absolutely. And
So
I don't think that medicine always has the answer, to be honest. Like the
no,
field is very good when it comes to like diagnosis and like telling you, okay, this is what's up, like or maybe when it comes to like mechanical issues, like okay, you broke your leg, we'll put it together. And but when it comes to like mental health, I feel like people who have lived through some stuff and now they are happy, right? They might be even more of an expert in the
mm,
field than people who just studied about it for years and they don't have the felt experience of it. So
no.
yeah, I'm with you on that for sure.
I found that the best psychotherapists that I've ever had, and I've had a bit of therapy, um, were the ones who with lived experience.
Hmm. I
Definitely.
totally
I've
agree.
been to I've been I've been to some, and some of them have said, you know more than I do. And it's like, oh, don't tell me that. I want you to fix me. But I'm over that. I know you can fix yourself. You don't need fixing. You can. Self-help is amazing. It's an amazing tool.
Hmm. And so
So
how did you get from this let's say mindset of like I need fixing, I need someone to fix me too, I can help myself and I can fix myself? Because I feel like a lot of people who are looking for help have this kind of mindset. They come to it. Even I had this mindset a few years ago. I'm
yeah, I
coming to
think
a
we
healer
all
and like,
do.
please heal me, you do the work for me, right? And it, again, it stems from this victim mentality rather than creator mentality. So how did you move from victim to the creator? And what would you say to these people who are still in this victim mode?
I think it was hitting rock bottom again, even though I'd had therapy, even though I dated someone who was an author of a really successful anxiety book, who was great and gave me a lot of guidance. But the realization was, you've got to do it yourself. If I hung around with Buddha every single day, but I didn't actually implement what he told me or what he advised, nothing had changed. And it was that realization. But it was also, I did go to a few Buddhist classes just to learn about the mind, because they're such experts on it. And it was the realization that everyone keeps telling me I have everything I need to do this myself. And that is so liberating when you actually start believing that and you start seeing results as a result of you taking the steps yourself. Because I think if you're waiting for someone to fix you, you're going to be waiting a long time, like I did. And you're giving your power away. You know, you're giving your energy away to something that can't be done. You can. People can guide you and, you know, support you and cheer you on, but it's actually you that has to do the work. And don't be scared of that, because the minute you start doing it, the empowerment you get is amazing. So,
Oh,
and I
that's
know,
awesome.
you know, I couldn't come out of my house. I could live in work. I could just about live in work, home, supermarket, work, home. It, and people, even though they don't mean to, let you down because they've got their own shit to deal with. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you can get to a stage, which you can, of having your own back, how much easier is your life going to be?
Hmm.
Because you're going to be there for yourself, and it's such a nice feeling.
Yes,
I don't mean
absolutely.
shut everyone out, you know, surround yourself with like-minded people, but include yourself in your life. I never used to do that. I'd do what everyone else wanted me to do. Now I say to myself, what do you want to do next? And it's
Mhm.
so lovely.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. It is really inspiring for everyone who listens as well, I'm sure. And so, what's the best way
Thank
to
you.
find you and to contact you if someone would like to buy your book or just have a chat or maybe.
Okay. Yeah. I'm very active on Instagram. So you find me on simply_anxious. And there's links on there for my book. I'm just updating my website. So there'll be lots of information on there and support. And I'm quite active on Instagram. So you'll find me every day. And please don't hesitate to send me a message, because I like responding. And that's it, really. That's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. Thank you
Or
so
you'll
much.
find me in the Peak District.
Oh, big district. Yeah, with the dogs, walking with the dogs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool.
that's me.
That's really, really cool. Thank you so
Oh,
much for
but
sharing everything that you said. It was really, really great and very deep. And I'm sure that if anyone feels anxious and they were
thank you.
listening to this conversation, they will get a lot out of it. So thank you so much for agreeing to be on our podcast. It's been really amazing.
Thank you so much. You're so lovely. And I've really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for listening. I feel like this conversation was a beautiful reminder to us that we are not broken. There's nothing to be fixed about us. So if you struggle with any emotion, whether it's anxiety or any other feeling, just know that you are not broken. You are who you are. And if you can just allow these feelings, let them out of your body, express them, then you're going to feel way lighter. So if you'd like to find me, I am The Connection Catalyst on Instagram. And thank you so much again for tuning in, and stay tuned to the next episode.